I'm Natalie. As mentioned before, Wojtek touched upon this topic of design systems, so I guess I'll just continue. So first, for context. For the last couple of years, I've been working on design systems, first at Yahoo, for a system across all mobile products and tablet, just creating the language. And then now at Slack, where I'm helping with the creation of the first design language. And since I spent a lot of time at work about it, I have lots of thoughts. I've been trying to find a bulletproof recipe for a perfect design system, and I'm still hoping it's somewhere out there. So if you look online, you see all those beautiful websites. They look perfect. And it's like, wow, what an inspiration. It seems like it's going to be really simple, right? We take what we have, organize it, publish it, and people will just use it. But then whenever you talk to people who are working on the systems team, or even at companies that have them, it seems like, man, it's a mess. It's really hard. Nobody knows what exactly is working, not working. And I think it's actually because it has two layers. It has the pixel layer. It's like, okay, we're going to use this color, or the word next versus continue. And that's what we usually see. But we rarely talk about the people layer, which is much deeper. And that's where we're going to talk about, well, okay, we have this green color. How do we communicate that to the rest of the team? And you can think about the people layer as a Pandora box of questions. It's like, okay, so how do we organize the team around the system? How do we build a documentation that's always up to date? How does it evolve? How do we maintain it? How do we enforce it? Etc., etc. But if you zoom out a little bit, you can find those three focus areas. What is a good process? How do you make people agree on things? And then how do you make people care? And that's what I want to talk about today. So, first, what is a good process? Well, when I started, I always thought it was simple. You have point A, where things are a mess. Everybody's using different components, writing different things, and then we just keep on going. And then there's a team that's created, 3 to 5 people. They become siloed, and then they create a system, and then we get to point B, where everything is perfect, organized, and then the job is done. But being on that team, I realized that when we got to point B, we had the website, it was published, in theory it would be great, but the mess was all around us. People were taking the components, the guidelines, and then creating a slightly different version of that. Here, there, tweaked here, there. And then instead of one component, we had 10 different ones based on that one. And I was like, interesting. Why is that? So I started talking to people. I would talk to anybody who would be willing to share anything. And there's 2 things that came out of it. One is that we're missing pieces. Since we're a siloed team and we did things on our own, we didn't know what was coming in the pipeline, etc., etc. We didn't consider some cases, and we didn't have them, so people had to create that. 2, people didn't feel included. People felt like, well, we're just told to do something. I guess I'll do it if I have to. But people didn't think of those cases, so I guess I'll just do it quietly in my corner and nobody will notice. I was like, that's not a great way of working. So we started different experiments. And one of them, we started office hours for the documentation team and the systems team, for people to give feedback, talk about the system. Is it working? Is it not working? Sharing things. The system team will be sharing the different things that they're working on. The features team will be sharing what they're working on. And it will be this continuous loop of feedback. We're working together to fit the needs of the individual feature, but also of the company's widespread teams. And then also, the system became more robust because we had all those ideas that were coming from different places. So it really made things better. And a couple of other things that worked was very simple. Having a representative for the team, like a face, but somebody that's approachable. Somebody that, if you're not happy with it, you can talk to and tell them why. Open meetings. Making sure that anybody is invited to it, they can see what's coming up, who's working on what, and giving feedback. Well, at Slack, we have feedback channels for everything, so naturally we have done that for the systems team. And also weekly updates. Something to make sure that the systems team is accountable to the rest of the features team, that they know what's coming up. So what does it have to do actually with process? Well, all of the things that listed may not work for you, or they may. I don't know. That depends on your company size, culture, and maturity level. But what I can say is about process. And yes, it looks more messy and complicated than the first graph. But open dialogue is messy, and making sure that everybody has a place where they can talk and raise their feedback is going to be difficult. But it's actually going to make things easier in the later, because it's actually going to get implemented. And making sure that even if you have a component gets messy and things get diverse, it's all about communicating back to the system team. So it's this loop of feedback that we can talk about it, and that's fine if it's messy, but it'll work itself out. Okay, so we have people talking, but as mentioned before, there's a lot of opinions. So how do we make people agree on things? Well, okay. I'm sure we've all been in a situation that, for example, there's a color blue, baby blue. And one person's like, wow, this color is amazing. I want to wear it. I want to design with it. Yes, it's going to be perfect for everything. And the other person's like, really? This is disgusting. I never want to see it again. And while some things are a matter of taste and we'll never agree on things, there's some things that we can agree on. Like, is this blue appropriate for our product? So at Yahoo, one thing that we did is whenever we're starting a new app, we defined those mobile principles. Imagine in a year, you meet a random person on the street. How would they describe your app in 3 words? Could be it's fast, it's comprehensive, it's a lot of content, and it's personalized. It fits my needs. So those 3 words would become our baseline for anything in the project. Do we need a new feature? Well, Boodle has one of those things, or actually will slow down the app. Well, then we don't really need it. For a design critique, does the design meet those promises that we made to our users? Or even with deciding on an MVP, are we cutting too much or not enough? So when working on the design systems, naturally we decided to do the principles as well. But that's the world of theory. Let's do an example. Let's say we're building a mail app. And our principles are, it needs to be simple, people need to be first, it needs to be very human, and also it needs to be efficient. We know apps are like on the go, mail is like in and out, we don't want to spend too much time on it. Okay. So we have 3 designs. So number 3 here, we have people, their pictures, we have their name, so that fulfills one of the requirements about being human. It seems pretty simple. There's just one email app, open, and then you can swipe to the next one. But it's not really efficient, because we know that most of the emails are spam emails. So if you had to read every one to triage it, that would take a lot of time. So this one's up. Number 2, simple. It's just a list, nothing more. It's efficient, it uses gestures, it has the actions, so that's also pretty good. But the subject is first, and then there's no picture, so we're not really fulfilling the promise of like, well, people need to be up front. So from all those 3, the one that fits most the principles that we said at the beginning is number 1. You can say, well, that's on iOS, how does it look on Android? Well, no matter the platform and the different interactions, like the sidebar will be different, the search will be different, we're still like fulfilling the promise that we said at the beginning, and it'll look like one product. And even if you scale that to the web, interactions are even more different, but you're fulfilling the promise of simplicity on web, so doing multi-checkboxes versus gestures. So having those principles and creating a shared language helps us get rid of our own biases. It's like, oh, I like this versus this. What's actually better for the project? So we have people talking, hopefully agreeing on things. So how do you make people care? Where there's this children's TV presenter, Mr. Rogers. And he used to carry this quote with him: "Frankly, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard their story." Which is slightly cheesy, but also it's true, because a good story makes us connect with other people. It'll help us connect with their world, create empathy, and we're naturally interested in those. And a design system is this little organism that's very fragile. You need to care for it not only by the systems team, but everybody in the company. Product managers, engineers, localization team, everybody need to help support it, because if it stops growing, it's basically dead. What a better way to do it than by telling a story? And depending on what story you want to tell, what you want to achieve, you can tell different stories, such as the origin story. If you want to convince people to use it. Remember when we used to have 10 different play buttons? Nobody knew which one to use. They were all implemented differently, and it was a mess. Users didn't know if this one's going in-app, out-app, etc., etc. Well, now you know why you have a design system. The inspiration story. If you want to inspire people from the outside community that designing for Android is really cool. Well, material design, at Google did a really great job with that. Defining the metaphor of paper and how does it apply in the digital world was really interesting. Or the evolution story, if you're trying to get more resources for your team. Well, we had 2 people, we organized a little bit. Imagine what we could do with 5 more people. But you don't tell a story once and then it's over. You tell the story in every little interaction or anything that you communicate within the company. So, for example, when you send a wiki update, making sure the theme, for example, of the paper is translated in that, in visuals or in just different frameworks. When presenting at all hands, maybe it doesn't have to be digital. Maybe just give out paper and then have people have a tactile experience if that's what your design language is about. Or even just creating a swag, something that they have a little thing on their desk, they can have it. And just whenever people are designing, writing, they always think back to it. It's like, aha, I remember that. When we tell people, it's like, you have to do this, people create this barrier. It's like, oh, why do I have to do this? You have no authority over me. People won't do it. But if you tell them, it's like, hey, look what we could achieve together, people will go on with you on the journey. We spend 8 hours at work every day. Nobody wants to take that time and build a shitty product, right? We want to do something that matters. So then people will go with you on that. Coming back again to that, I found it really interesting that we keep talking about pixels and everything, all the new innovations that are in the system, design system world that are all about that surface, new tools that will fix anything you want, etc., etc. But we rarely talk about the people layer, which ironically is what makes our system from the idea of thought to actually the product. And when you want to even zoom out more about that, it's all about good communication and embracing that communication. And we've been taught about this since we're little kids, so I think there's hope for all of us. Thank you. Oh. I guess any questions?
Okay, thank you, Nathalie. Do you have any questions?
I have one question. It is about your perfect design system team. What competences or job titles would be great in this team?
I think that depends on your company culture. So if within your company you work really close with engineers, then they should be in that team. There's no reason, because you're going to be working together on making the code. If you work closely with product writers, then they should be in the team as well. It really should reflect how you build products.
Okay, more questions? I don't see any. Thank you, Natalia, for joining us, making it to Poland.